Hello, welcome to your first virtual field trip. Today we will be looking at igneous rocks from several different locations out in the California Mojave Desert. So here we are down in Azusa. We're going to drive up here through Santa Clarita, and then we're going to cross over the San Andreas Fault here. So that red line here, remember that's the plate boundary, that's the San Andreas Fault. And we're going to make a sharp right turn along the Garlic Fault. So you guys looked at the Garlic Fault in your San Andreas lab and you had to label the sense of displacement. So this virtual field trip will take you along 3 different stops. For the first stop is in an area called the Lava Mountains. So all of the colors here are the same as your lab assignment with USGS here. So remember, you had to click these different regions and tell me what types of rocks they were, their age, and how they form. So now we're going to take that into the field and actually get a real look at them. And remember, here's our geologic time scale. So all of these words here are indicative of the age of the rock. So you can flip back to that from a Google search if you get lost on the time scale here. So I pulled these layers up in Google Earth and labeled the 3 stops. So here's stop 1 in the Lava Mountains. It sits on this red colored region. Stop 2 is up here in the Argus Range. And there was going to be a stop in Death Valley, but they closed it down. So all of these 3 stops were in areas that were still open. They're just off the grid, so they're not campground areas. It's called BLM land, and so you can access these areas, but it's more primitive camping, so that's why there's no people there. So we didn't get into Death Valley, but we were on the edge here in something called the Argus Range, so that will be our second stop. And then the 3rd stop is over here in the Owens Peak Wilderness. So we're going to make this little triangle of a trip here and analyze the different rocks that we see, discuss how they formed, and discuss their ages relative to the major geologic events in California. Okay, welcome to stop 1 on your virtual field trip. So this feature here, as you can see, it's dome-shaped and red in color. And the shape is because it is a little baby cone volcano. It's called a lava dome. And this dome is tertiary in age, which means it's about 20 million years old. Representation of the birth of the San Andreas. There was some tectonic reorganization, and these little domes were erupted. So we're still in the Lava Mountains right now, so looking at tertiary rocks within the last 20 million years, and we're about to walk to this white lava flow and investigate. Here we are at stop 2. We're going to have an inspection to this white lava. This is not something you see every day. All right, let's take a look at this. So what you're looking at here.
Oh no.
Oh, watch out.
Sorry.
Blows here. So take a look. Look at the rock here. So notice that it's very fine grained. Right? You can see some small crystals, but it's mostly fine grained. And if I hammer it, watch, boom. You see that? It just like broke all apart. So it's really weak, easy to break apart, very light in color, very fine grained. And this tells me that it was erupted from a volcano at the surface and that the magma contained very low density minerals that are always light in color. Whereas this rock, this one's much heavier, it's dark in color as you can see. If you hammered it open, this is what you would get. So here, look at this edge here. You can see the crystals are very coarse, wouldn't you say? Would you agree?
Yeah,
yes.
I agree.
Yeah. This means that because the crystals are so large, it cooled underground. It was not extruded or erupted at the surface. It cooled slowly underground, and that's why the crystals are so big, is because they had time to grow large. And that's why it's much harder to hammer. You know, you'd be here all day hammering this one. See, look at that. Beautiful specimens. And then there was a third rock here, which I found. Hold on. Have a pan around maybe while I dig this rock up. Oh god, it's stuck. Oh, here we go. Alright, so now I'm going to hammer this rock open. So yeah, zoom in on this green rock here. So I'm hammering open this green rock. We're going to see what it looks like on the inside. And the reason I'm hammering it is because I want to get a fresh surface. I want to make sure I'm looking at the crystals, not dirt or lichen or moss or anything that's growing on it. So let's open it a little more now. And always use a hammer. Be safe with a hammer. Wear safety glasses. Oh wow, this is a nice one. Okay, so this rock, this is extrusive also. You can see it's very fine grained, but it's green in color. But this one's a little more coarse grained than this one. So if I had to define these, I'd say this is a rhyolite, probably pyroclastic rhyolite, which means that when it erupted, it had a lot of ash. That's why it's so light, right, and flimsy. This one's a little bit harder, so it's probably a lava flow and only a little ash. So intrusive, this dark rock here. Extrusive, this white rock here. So in this stop here, we are now located just outside of Sequoia National Forest, and we're on the west side of the Mojave Desert. We've just come from the east side where we were looking at those volcanics and the Death Valley structures. So here you can see that this distance you have a nice whitish, kind of blackish speckled looking hill. And so this is all granite and granodiorite of the Sierra Nevada batholith. So in California's long tectonic history, remember it bordered a subduction zone, and that subduction zone was associated with melting, of course, and of course a magma chamber. So if we look down at some samples here, this is the rocks from up at the top of the mountain. So a granite is an intrusive rock. So as I'm looking at this, I can see it's mostly white, it's speckled with black, and a little bit of pink. And because I can see the crystals, you know, they're very obvious, as opposed to something like this, where you can't see any crystals. But here you can see enough to tell that there's a difference between the colors. And if you get a really good look, you could even see crystal faces. But because of the size of the crystals, I know that this rock is intrusive, meaning that it cooled slowly underground as opposed to rapidly at the surface. So on the first day we looked at a volcano and the rocks were more fine-grained. Remember the white lava? It was very indistinguishable, whereas this granite is the intrusive version of that white lava. So while that white lava was erupting at the surface, this was cooling slowly underground. And over millions of years, eventually, this piece of the magma chamber, the Sierra Nevada batholith, was raised to the surface through erosion. So these rocks are Permian in age,
So roughly around 300 to 250 million years old. And they represent the pink unit on your geologic maps that you looked at online with USGS and at the introduction to the field trip.